I recognize Representative Hageman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today. The Biden administration's open border policies have fueled a historic crisis of illegal immigration, drug trafficking, and environmental degradation along the U.S.-Mexico border, especially on federal lands. Roughly 35% of the southern border is comprised of federal land, which has been exploited by human traffickers, drug cartels, and illegal immigrants due to its remote and uncontrolled nature. Federal land management agencies have failed to provide Border Patrol with timely access and adequate infrastructure, allowing criminal activity to flourish and damaging public lands. H.R. 1820, the Flash Act, restores control by authorizing road construction, reducing environmental restrictions on border enforcement, increasing law enforcement access, and holding federal agencies accountable for securing our public lands. Our witness's testimony highlights the Flash Act's necessity to defend national security, preserve environmental resources, and empower local and federal law enforcement to combat illegal activity on our public lands. Sheriff Cleveland, Wyoming may be more than 1,000 miles from the southern border, but the consequences of failed border security have reached every single community. Fentanyl and other narcotics are flowing into Wyoming through illegal border crossings, and the cost to public safety and human life has been enormous. You have described the severe environmental damage in Terrell County caused by illegal crossings, including trash, human waste, erosion, and destroyed property. Have you seen evidence of long-term degradation of federal lands like national parks and wilderness areas in your region?
I would say yes, ma'am. And again, based on trash that's left behind, again, being a native of that area, having worked out in Arizona, in the Coronado National Forest, a career in the U.S. Border Patrol and seeing the amounts of trash that's left behind. I also spoke to the buoys down in Eagle Pass and how the administration targeted our governor about the deployment of those. And then yet I can take you to a portion of my border in my county and show you where those mussels, although they aren't a human life, but where they're still, if we're making a point that those buoys are poisoning them or killing them, then I can show you where human crossing the border are definitely having an impact on those.
Okay. Wyoming is home to millions of acres of federal land, and we know firsthand how restrictive management practices can hinder law enforcement. How have road access limitations and federal permitting delays impacted Border Patrol's ability to secure terrain like in the Big Bend region?
So my county, there is no federal land other than on the wild and scenic Rio Grande River that we spoke of that's part of the national park system and the Big Bend National Park. All of our roads are personally owned, privately owned by landowners. In the Big Bend, I'm not aware of any problems. Again, great working relationship between the National Park Service, U.S. Border Patrol, and then our local law enforcement, speaking about Sheriff Dotson there, who we're both very familiar with. We do a great job, meaning all of us working together to protect our portion of the border out in that area.
Well, Mr. Perez, I'm going to turn to you then. Border Patrol's ability to access and patrol federal lands is not just a border issue, and it's in fact a national one. In Wyoming, 48% of our surface estate is owned by the federal government, and we know the challenges of dealing with land management agencies that prioritize paperwork over safety. You testified that Border Patrol has better access to private lands than to federal lands in some instances. Can you provide specific examples of how these access limitations have delayed apprehensions or prevented effective surveillance?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. So I can point out to deaths that occur because we're not able to patrol those lands unless there's an emergency, and we don't have the tactical infrastructure set up, so we can't monitor that area. So we've got essentially blind spots along the border, and the cartels take advantage of that because they don't adhere to the regulations we have to adhere to, and so it's very detrimental for us.
So under the Flash Act, the Department of the Interior and Agriculture would be required to install at least 584 miles of navigable roads within 10 miles of the border. From a national perspective, including in states like Wyoming, how would improving access infrastructure on public lands affect our ability to intercept drugs and human trafficking operations before they reach interior states?
This would essentially end what we call the no-go zones. We'd be able to actually go and patrol and have eyes along the border and take back the areas that we have ceded to the cartels because of the administration, the previous administration's policies.
Well, I think that that's all a very good thing for us to do. I appreciate your testimony, and with that, I yield back.